Now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting-edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com, the beat writer for the LSU Tigers for the Baton Rouge Morning Advocate. It's Scott Rabalais. How you doing, Scott?
I'm fine, Bryan. How are you this morning?
Doing very well. Thank you very much for coming on with us. LSU plays at Auburn this weekend. Historically, that's been one of the better games on the schedule. Is that going to be the case this weekend?
Well, on paper, it doesn't look that way. I mean, Auburn is a team that's certainly in transition, kind of trying to find its identity in the post-Cam Newton era. Last year, they were 8-5, off to a 1-2 start this year, and could easily be 0-3 if they hadn't beaten ULM in overtime last Saturday. So, a lot of disparity between these two teams. LSU is ranked first in 4 out of 8 major SEC statistical categories, and Auburn is ranked last or second to last in about as many. So they give us a lot of yards rushing. LSU runs well. They don't pass very well. LSU's pass defense is good. I tell you what, LSU's never been this big a favorite going to Auburn. They're almost a 3-touchdown favorite, and that's never happened before. So it's a little hard to know what to expect because you have gotten to expect over the years for this to be a very competitive rivalry.
And it's a little hard to know just how good LSU is right now. I realize they got huge numbers, and the Washington win was impressive, but, I mean, what do you learn when they beat up on a team like Idaho?
That's very true, too. LSU has not quite played the schedule that Auburn has. You know, they played Clemson, and they played Mississippi State, and those two teams are ranked. LSU, they set up the schedule this way, though. They wanted it this way. Last year, you know, they started with some really tough games in the preseason, the pre-conference schedule with Oregon in Arlington and at West Virginia. And this year, you know, they knew they'd be bringing along a new quarterback in Zach Mettenberger, so they kind of wanted to ease into the schedule. But despite Auburn's struggles, this definitely will be LSU's biggest test so far.
Yeah, no question about it. And it's a tough place to play. It always has been for LSU. And so you would think it's going to be an emotional ball game, if nothing else.
Yeah, it'll be a night game. I'm sure they're going to have a good crowd. Again, you know, they're coming off a win. They feel like they have a little momentum at Auburn. They're going to try to play off that. It's going to be a little emotional. There's been a little bulletin board material this week. Some Auburn players citing something that J.C. Copeland, LSU's fullback, said back in December. Apparently, though we didn't have it in our paper, but he said it to somebody, I suppose, that Auburn didn't want to hit in the game last October in Baton Rouge. That LSU won 45-10. So obviously, anytime there's a big lopsided score like that, someone gets you in their home stadium, they want a little payback. But it's quite a different scenario from the last time these two teams played in Auburn. I mean, 2 years ago, they were both 7-0. Of course, Auburn had Cam Newton at quarterback, and it was a knockdown, drag-out kind of game. Auburn ended up winning 24-17. They piled up a lot of yards, but LSU had a chance. And the Tigers have lost 5 of their last 6 at Auburn overall. Only won once there under Les Miles. So they're looking for a little redemption as well in a way.
All right, the Tigers were forced to cancel a practice this week because of a bomb threat. How does that affect their preparations for the week?
Monday, this when the bomb threat occurred, and they had to evacuate the whole campus, including the football facility. Monday's the day when they review a lot from the previous week's game, and they start their film study, and it's not a day of heavy contact, so it didn't hurt them as much as, say, you know, Tuesday, Wednesday. Those are the real big installation days, and no one has said, but one has to assume that if LSU played Idaho last week, they were doing a little preparation for Auburn beforehand. Zach Mettenberger mentioned that maybe you over-prepare for a game like this, and, you know, you could take it to mean something like that. So, you know, they don't have a whole lot to correct from a 63-14 win. There were a couple of breakdowns in the secondary. Zach threw an interception at the goal line that did change the momentum of the game, something he really needs to avoid doing in this game. LSU was going in for a touchdown to go up 21-0, and all of a sudden it's 14-7, and was a one-touchdown game there for a while in the second quarter. So there are some things to correct, but Miles said yesterday, I don't know if we ever get caught up because they always feel like there's something else they can do, but they also at the same time don't feel like they're going to be caught too underprepared. If it was something like that was going to happen, and it's happened to them before this year. The week of the North Texas game, they missed a day of practice because of Hurricane Isaac. So if it's going to happen, it didn't happen at the worst time.
Right. Talk a little bit about the progress so far of the new quarterback, Zach Mettenberger, and how he's done so far. Is he where he needs to be right now, and how is he going to handle going into a hostile environment like this for the first time?
Well, Zach is he's progressing. I mean, he's only made 3 starts, and he makes some mistakes now and again. Like I said, he's thrown 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. The 2 interceptions are at the goal line, one against North Texas and one against Idaho. And when touchdowns that could have made a big difference to the momentum of the game, touchdowns against a better team, like Auburn is, despite their record, a better team, that could make a big difference. So you want to eliminate those kind of mistakes. So that said, it is to be expected. He also makes some very excellent throws. He stands pretty tall in the pocket. He needs to took a big hit in the North Texas game when he held on the ball too long and got nailed by a corner blitz from the right, and not his blind side. So he needs to work on that, but not as much pressure on him the last couple of games, though he was sacked by Idaho. So I think he's done well, and he's a cool customer. I mean, he's a very laid back kind of kid. He doesn't get overly excited too high or too low. He's kind of maintains an even strain throughout, and we'll see what happens in his first road game. Obviously, there'll be a little excitement, and he said, I want to prove myself, I want to do well, but at the same time, I wouldn't expect him to get overwhelmed by the situation either.
From a national perspective, everybody says now, that having seen USC lose to Stanford over the weekend, that it's Alabama, LSU, and then the rest of the field, at least it seems that way at this point. But you have the eyeball test. You've seen this football team. Do you see LSU being that dominant? Are they as good as they were last year?
I think in some ways, yes, and more so, and in some ways they still have a ways to go. I think the defense is very good. I don't think it's quite what it was last year. They were number 2 in the country behind Alabama last year in total defense. And is it quite that? I don't know. I mean, they've given up a couple of drives, a couple of big plays. They're making big plays. It's like it seems to be a little more of a feast or famine kind of factor with this defense this year. The offensive line, they lost Chris Falk, the starting left tackle. They've had to make some moves there, and that's going to be a key issue Saturday against Auburn. They've got Corey Lemonier, who's an excellent defensive end, one of the best in the SEC, and he's going to be a real test he'll play both sides of the line. He'll be a real test for LSU, but the passing game definitely is an upgrade, although they haven't relied on it too much. Zach threw 22 passes against Idaho. That's the most he's thrown in any game. And but the running game continues to be strong. They did lose Alfred Blue, who started the first 3 games with a knee injury. He's out at least for a while. I'm sure they hope to have him back by the Florida game, but one doesn't know if that's realistic or not. But they still have a lot of other running backs. Kenny Hilliard, who scored 2 touchdowns in each of the first 3 games, and Spencer Ware and Michael Ford and the freshman Jeremy Hill. So they still have quite a complement of running backs there. So I think the receivers have played well. So I think overall it's a team pretty comparable to last year. I think they're probably glad that they're going to Auburn instead of playing Alabama to open SEC play, right now, because Alabama is playing, really terrifically. Although, they played a couple of teams that you could argue that, maybe Michigan was overrated, and certainly Arkansas was a little depleted. So both teams probably have a ways to go before, they play in November, but so much is pointing towards that game. I mean, there are a lot of tests in between, and LSU's got this game. They go to Florida, who's looking really good. They have South Carolina. They go to Texas A&M. There are a lot of tests, but at the same time, there's still a sense that these are the best 2 teams in the country, and unless they play poorly, that no one's going to knock them off but each other.
Very good. Hey, Scott, thanks very much for coming on with us today. We appreciate the preview of the ball game, and we look forward to talking to you down the line.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Scott Rabalais from the Baton Rouge Morning Advocate on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM.